Season 2 of the One Piece live action is finally here, and I got some pretty big opinions. With some insane characters to play with, some of my favorite moments from the entire series, and a lot more pressure on its back than the first season, how did this one do? How did Season 2 actually fare? Did it knock it out of the park, or did it absolutely flop and sink deep down into Davy Jones's locker? And most important of all, of course, how is Chopper? Did they actually do him good? So, where do we start? Well, I kind of think I've come to a pretty solid order of how to exactly break everything down here, because there was a lot this season, and you can check out the YouTube chapters in the description or along this silly little timeline down here to skip ahead depending on, what you really care about, or just join me for the entire ride. Now, rather than just going episode by episode here and recapping what happened, since I think that would get a little bit tedious and pretty much all over the place, I wanted to discuss things in 3 fairly big chunks today that I think probably matter the most to you. We've got a plot, which will include good and, well, not so good adjustments that were made to the plot for the live action specifically. After that, I want to go through all the key characters and new characters and side characters in that entire character breakdown section. And then I'll kind of wrap things up with the production and post-production specifically. Choreography, practical effects, VFX, editing, music, all that really fun stuff that I'm actually fairly excited to talk about. And then tomorrow, if you're still not tired of live action stuff, you'll get to see my full video breaking down all the Easter eggs and differences between the live action and the manga, which there are plenty of, some of which I actually have to touch on in this analysis and breakdown too. So let's get into it. The good plot. So, obviously, condensing roughly 70 to 80 chapters worth of content into 8 episodes means that there are going to be some pretty big pivots made to the material. And especially during this part of the main series, Loketown through Drum Island, there are actually a lot of retroactive things that Oda eventually wrote into the story. And so right off the bat, I feel like I've just got to give some mad props to the entire production staff for writing a story that feels paced, well. They had no easy feat here, dealing with a lot of dense lore drops, explaining new powers, systems, etc. And while I would have personally preferred that they left a little bit more to the viewers to realize on their own and, did less blatant explaining and throwing exposition in your face, I do think that maybe I was a little bit too harsh out of the gate with it in my initial reaction. Because obviously, in a live action, there just isn't the benefit of text boxes that explain devil fruits and question corners that explain fun facts, etc. And so, since the time was fairly dense and, there was a real budget runtime for this, I've kind of come to terms with the fact that a lot of blatant exposition was just done for the sake of speeding up the episodes and leaving some viewers who probably aren't exactly anime consumers by nature or just are consuming One Piece for the very first time, which this was mostly for, I think, giving them the ability to understand things in this really fruitful world and being able to catch up with how things work and, what the powers are and what the rules are. Not to mention that, quite frankly, the anime and manga can also be really straightforward with information sometimes, so in some ways, they're actually being quite faithful here. Now, I do want to punch in specifically on that retroactive stuff I mentioned, because as a fan of the series in its entirety, I'm not even sure if fan even encapsulated, as a connoisseur, as a fanatic of One Piece, I actually love the implications created by how the live action arranged the story compared to what we actually get in the main storyline. And I would even argue that in some ways it may even be better since I have just so much added context. 2 primary examples to make this point, and arguably the biggest examples, are the decisions to add half of Brook's flashback and Bartolomeo into the series so early on. Now, yes, I know I said I'm gonna do characters later, but I really have to kind of let out some joy here with Brook specifically. Like, the actor who played him, Marshall T. Batchaman, absolutely crushed it, man. Can we agree on this? The laugh, on point, the suit looked really slick, the singing, amazing. Genuinely was so excited to just see him busting out the pirate national anthem, Binks Sake, or Binks' Brew, which doesn't sound as cool, but I'll live, right? And seeing him alongside the Rumber Pirates was a really, really cool way to add some extra emotion to the entire Laboon plot thread that actually elevated it to one of my favorite episodes out of the entire season. I'll touch a little bit more on that point specifically later in the character section, but I just couldn't resist talking about him just for a second already because really good stuff. As for the Bardo stuff, it's kind of the same thing. Seeing his Dressrosa story woven in here was a really nice touch, I think, and hypothetically, if it were to ever get to Dressrosa, which I don't think is the plan anyways, but if it did, it'd be a really cool turn of fate to establish earlier. And pretty much the same point goes for a lot of the additional content that got put into the season that wasn't in the, base material here. Like Raj and Garb talking about Ace, which was actually used as a sort of cool red herring implying that Roger may be Luffy's dad, juxtaposed with the reveal of Dragon shortly after, who of course is actually Luffy's dad. However, I will admit at this point that after all the really cool stuff we got recently with them in the manga specifically recently, I was kinda hoping that they'd actually play up the goofy, loud, fun vibes together, right? Instead, Roger here feels a little bit too serious for me and kind of is close, but not quite what I wanted him to be. Or how Smoker and Tashigi fought Miss Thursday and Mr. 11 instead of already just having captured Mr. 11 as happens in the story. For me, showing that entire side quest is actually a really nice way to just interconnect the story more and make things feel like they are all happening in tandem in a way that the manga actually doesn't and often can't. And that doesn't just happen in those stories because there's actually another character who we get to see pulling all the strings for the season, and it goes a long way really towards making Baroque Works feel like a real, powerful, threatening presence in the entire One Piece world throughout the live action. Miss All Sunday, aka Nico Robin. The decision to have her pop around everywhere, being a floating ghostly presence, threatening Vivi and the Straw Hats while manipulating characters in events like Whiskey Peak, Wapol, Drum Island, Little Garden, and even having the opening scene and hook to this entire series in episode 1, it's a super good touch that I personally really enjoyed and really loved. It really kind of helped the plot feel a lot tighter and kind of like a more cohesive arc leading up to Alabasta, despite the world being so crazy expansive, especially after getting into the Grand Line. As for like a totally new element that I genuinely loved and might be my favorite addition that I actually hope they do a lot more of, it's Phantom Mihawk. Now, I don't think it needs to be Mihawk every single time, don't get me wrong, that probably would get old at some point. But seriously, having Zoro argue with essentially his own consciousness and his own will, which has now manifested as Mihawk, pushing him to grow stronger, is absolutely awesome, dude, and a great way to also bring back Mihawk in the season where he's just otherwise not gonna play a role. It just feels really cool and like a natural element of his character that I immediately popped off about. I kinda hope that other characters like Luffy, Chopper, and even Robin herself might end up having some of these eventually, because they kind of work both incorporating more lore, kind of growing the characters, and giving Zoro specifically here a character arc that he doesn't otherwise really get. I love that type of stuff. Not to mention, there was a beautiful level of little lore reveals and details that I enjoyed here. Tons of new transponder snails, which we love, and the confirmation that Kong, my favorite former fleet admiral, is a practitioner of absolute justice. Gotta make a Kong video sometime. The inclusion of Dory and Broggy's weapon names, tons of little tidbits for longtime fans to enjoy as well, which is something I really think needs to be included for longtime fans to really have a blast with the show, alongside new viewers, which already by default is already a really hard balance to strike. I think we can all agree. I'm not super envious and think they did a pretty good job. Now, I don't know about you, but I know that me and my team had at least because of these. And of course, it also really hits all the staple moments that you'd kind of come to expect, right? Chopper's flashback actually had me crying, which I did not expect. Hero's moment absolutely ripped, that one had me tearing up. The reveal of the Will of D was present in this season, and even some other stuff that I expected them to slightly change actually made its way fully into this season. If you want some examples of that, dragon's introduction, the mentioning of the sun gods, yeah, they couldn't help themselves, very cool, and Zoro's total bloodbath on Whiskey Peak, which was done so well, and honestly maybe even better than in the manga, if I dare say so, because seeing it in action just was insanely cool and satisfying. But if you're now worrying, Manu, you're celebrating this season way too hard, do you not have any criticisms? Don't you worry, this now brings me to some negative stuff, which of course isn't the end of the world, but is definitely something that rubbed me a little bit the wrong way, or where I felt a little bit let down. The bad plot. Alright, time to be a little bit of a hater. I'll be real, man, I wasn't too big a fan of the comedy throughout this entire season. I do think it got a lot better as the season went on, and I noticed it a lot less as we went through episodes, but my personal tastes weren't exactly satisfied, especially in the early half of the season. I think that the live action was at its best in season 1, and is still at its best when they're actually deeply focusing on the drama, the main plot, and some crazy important character moments, backstories, etc. And I get it, it's difficult, it's manga and anime humor, and Oda's cheesy version of humor is kind of written pretty well. It works okay in the anime, it works really well in the manga, especially in Japanese, and I just don't think it kind of sticks the landing in the live action most of the time, but this is a very personal feeling, I know, and it might be different for you because comedy is subjective. Who knew? Now, I think you probably like campy if you're like a Power Rangers fan or that style of very quippy, Marvel-esque kind of lines, right, that we have. Humor is alright, and it's great, and I think bringing that goofiness to the screen and trying to, bring that with the live action as well is a good thing. There are even some very decent throwaway lines that I enjoyed, like Usopp calling Miss Golden Week creepy longstocking, or Sanji dropping the chains red wine candle wax. Someone had a good time here line, which actually did get a pretty good chuckle out of me, as did Zoro's kind of weird vibes in the first 2 episodes, but I don't think most of it really got like actual good laughs out of me, and in the worst case, some just actually made me cringe a little bit. Now, I actually do think that there is something to be said about the degree to which they are being faithful, working against the adaptation here, since the execution of key plot threads and character moments doesn't necessarily carry the same weight. For example, and I have to say it, Luffy screaming all the time, it's not bad per se, since it's character accurate, I guess, but I don't think it really fits all that much with a live action version. Like, his screams are too human, too normal, I guess, but still done in a way that frames them as goofy and comical, so kind of trying to do both things at the same time. Like, take Luffy's laugh on the execution platform. This man was just psychotic. It's not what I, or really any of my team at least, felt good with. It was not that happy, I don't care, I had my fun adventure, good vibes feeling. It didn't land as convincing me that Luffy was carefree here. He felt like more so deranged at that point, which he is, don't get me wrong, but not in that way. Does that make sense? If you've read the manga or watched the anime, I think you know what I mean. And dude, I'll be real with you, they say the word Shanks so many times. Like, truly everyone and their mother just goes, "Oh, Shanks!" Maybe at least like 5 or 6 times per episode. I really should have done a Shanks tracker if I had realized it was going to be so common. And I'm not saying that I'm a professional writer, because I'm not, but boy howdy, like, let's come up with some different expletives here, guys. There are other fun curse words you can use, turns out, in the English language. I mean, I guess at least Sanji gave us a couple of decent F-bombs here and there, but Shanks, there was a lot of that. Now, obviously, there were also some big changes to the plot, which was to be expected, but some of them left me a little bit sour, or at the very least, scratching my head in like a little bit of confusion. Now, while I do understand that this was obviously a result of pacing and timing, I do think it worked strongly against the series at some points to make such big changes to some key arcs in some fairly odd ways. Like, they just completely reformatted the introductions and interactions across the entire board on Drum Island. Like, I get it, it was the material they had to cut the most from, of course, but also it was 3 very long episodes, right? And there were a lot of key changes to how and when we meet certain figures that I don't think were absolutely ideal. Like, Kureha's intro, Walpole's intro, like we never even get to see his ship and things of that nature. Like, I didn't hate it, but I do think one thing here that really didn't help Nami specifically was the fact that there was no Cyclone outside of Drum Island, getting into that island, because one of the truly hardest hitting moments for her in the entire early part of the show, something that really builds her up to feel strong and unique with a very unique skill set and power, is her attachment to the weather and how she can literally feel it inside her bones. It is so rad seeing her do that while literally dying and saving the crew still in her very debilitated state. Not sure about you, but for me, it added so much to early Nami, but we just don't get that here. And instead, we just get a short example of it before Dragon arrives, where she's like, ooh, there's a storm coming, I can feel it. And personally, I would have taken the massive Cyclone moment just over that one any single day of the week. But again, I don't hate it. I just kind of feel a little bit disappointed, but maybe those are too high expectations to have. I don't know, let me know. Now, what I was really not a fan of was the truly severe lack of Dory and Broggy on Little Garden specifically. That was their arc. It's about them, and I feel like they were there, yes, but they weren't really there. Especially because Broggy was just fake dead for half of it, and Dory was frozen in a cave in wax for all of it. Those episodes were really good. I did enjoy Little Garden, but not because of the Giants, mostly because of Baroque Works. And it's actually double sad because the Giants were awesome, and I wanted to see so much more of them, get more Elbaf lore, but I kind of felt like we didn't get enough of them to really grow attached to them. I feel like as a manga reader, Dory and Broggy were staple favorites for a very long time, and their reintroduction into the story later on was so cool specifically because of how fond I was of them early on getting into One Piece for the first time. I just don't think the same would be the case if, say, the live action somehow got to the Elbaf or Egghead arc 50 years from now. The choice to make it way more centered around the freaks that are Mr. 3 and Miss Golden Week is good. I wanted that, I hoped for that, and they absolutely delivered. Again, I think those episodes were really strong, but it really did feel less like a cool prehistoric giant island and more like they fight Baroque Works on Discount Jurassic Park, if that makes sense, which is still very cool, but just not like manga Little Garden cool. Now again, I do get it. We likely will never get that far with the live action. That's probably never been the plan, so there might just be no real reason to let these characters really draw it out. If anything, I guess you could make the argument that just introducing them would already be enough for some fans who continue on where the live action inevitably at some point leaves off, right? But it's kind of a hard thing for me specifically as a One Piece YouTuber, a longtime fan, to come to terms with this because I kind of want new fans to have a similar experience with these characters as you or I had. Probably, unless you're watching One Piece for the first time, let me know in the comments. I'm very curious if you're watching this video, kind of cool. If so, be careful, a lot of spoilers on the rest of the channel. Now, Dragon is another prime example of just a pretty lackluster appearance, I think. Why does he have eyebrows, first of all? Shouldn't have them. I don't like him. It kind of looks very wrong. Sabo? Honestly, just so unnecessary because he looks clunky and doesn't have any lines. It's kind of like a weird Easter egg edition that feels kind of out of place rather than a, ooh, that's him moment. I'm not sure if you felt the same way, or arguably the one that left the biggest hole in my personal heart is Laboon not being an island whale. Now, I get why they didn't do it, right? I cannot imagine doing Inside Laboon was easy to do as is, but it just kind of feels a little bit wrong. I feel like audiences might be very confused if they actually choose to continue the story when inevitably they see Crocus inside a giant whale. And with everything else they put into the show and the season, it just feels like a very odd place to suddenly draw the line with suspension of disbelief. Overall, I really wanted just a little bit more here, but I also got way more than I expected in some different ways, and it feels like a uniquely refreshing turn of events in many cases. I never thought that this would actually be what might make or break the season for me, and it wasn't. Those are actually, of course, the characters, and I'm happy to say that, for the most part, the characters really rip, dude. The Straw Hats. And I think I'm just gonna go kind of just punch in on each single character group. Straw Hats, side characters, and villains. First up is the main crew, my best friends, and for the most part, I was really happy with how they grew and were shaped throughout Season 2 as well. Monkey D. Luffy himself continues to be a solid lead, and Iñaki Godoy delivered for the most part, I think. I already mentioned my lack of love for his execution platform scene and the screams that just don't feel as Luffy. And overall, I think he might have been one of the weaker Straw Hats, but when he truly locks in, man, does he absolutely crush it. His fight with Wapol was an absolute blast. His climb, dude, the climb was easily the most powerful moment, and he did it absolute justice. Overall, I'm decently happy, and I was actually a little bit concerned they leaned more into the Nika stuff a little bit too early, which they luckily didn't. However, he still very much feels like a joy boy, and in his moments with Vivi in particular really got me excited, not only for a Season 3, but also for their inevitable reunion in the main storyline as well. Next, I want to focus on Nami, because seriously, I kind of think that she stole the show entirely this season. More than ever, she was a super central element, and her role as basically the character glue of the entire crew was just very, very apparent and executed incredibly well. From distributing pocket money to having total dominance of the crew and her expert navigation skills on full display, I really love seeing Nami return to being very, very important in the crew. Really, I just probably can't stress enough how nice it is to really see her navigate, lead, and struggle with her own self-image, especially as she lands in the Grand Line, particularly with a more sidelined role that she now has currently in the story. Also, let's be real, outside of Zoro, who just, I don't know, like his guy probably was like on some crazy stuff, she easily had the best action choreography and absolutely delivered here. Emily Rudd, you nailed it this season, and I'm very confident you will continue to nail it as we set sail towards Alabasta, and I truly cannot wait. Now, other than the first season, this time around, Makenyu Zoro was actually a real highlight for me, undoubtedly. Now, I'll admit, personally, I didn't love the odd and comedic angle they took him in, with the first few episodes, just because I didn't love the humor in the first few episodes in general, but I do know that my team members really did, and to be honest, I do love that they finally tried making Zoro a lot more funny and human, adding so much more to his character and being closer to what he is in the manga. It's just different and better than from the first season, and definitely has a lot of charm, and even if some of the jokes were a bit much for me, I can see why it works. Now, he obviously really locked in and then returned to kind of the badass Zoro after episode 3 with all the crazy Whiskey Peak stuff. He also had a lot of good arguments with the crew members across the board, and he really does his best to remind you that he's top dog, even when sometimes he's not. And again, I think making him a little bit less serious and the cool guy was just such a good and strong choice for this overall season. Very happy that they apparently listened to some audience feedback there, and can't wait for, keeping that line in the next season. Usopp, funnily enough, is where I had a lot of discussion with my team. He kind of started off a little bit weak, and after episode 2, I was getting a little bit nervous, but of course, the Lord of Destruction then became the absolute GOAT on Little Garden. He had some absolute banger lines, came in clutch very often, and was played incredibly well, I think. Now, he's always a little bit hard to pinpoint, I think, because Jacob Romero is just very cool by nature, I think, but I do think this season found a really good way to balance Usopp's lameness with Jacob's just natural cool vibes and created a uniquely lovable sniper for the crew that's not as pathetic as the manga version, but just hits like a real sweet spot as a character that feels realistic, has his weak moments for his character, but then still, delivers really hard on the bravery. Not to mention that I think easily one of my favorite moments of the entire season was his absolutely insane flex with the darts at Whiskey Peak and his little spat with Zoro on Drum Island. It's so clear in the live action that Usopp is always a brave warrior of the sea, and that eventually he will need to learn that for himself. Now, for Sanji, I have him on my shirt. I will admit, I was a little bit snuffed by the plot. Like, overall, Sanji's role was very consistent, but I do think the show put it actually best during the final battle with Wapol. I let you down in Loketown, I won't again, and yeah, admittedly, while he did have some great moments and I think executed the Mr. Prince scene very well and had his battle with the Unluckies, I just wasn't like super blown away by Sanji this season. Taz did well though, I'm not mad at him at all, and I am much more hopeful for Alabasta though, since Sanji has some super great and iconic moments then, so fingers crossed. Acting wise though, he was pretty much like season 1, emotional, he delivered exactly what he needed and was a charming guy, as Sanji should be, and just overall, again, compared to the manga, was a little bit of a cooler, more like badass version of the real Sanji, who has of course the crushing character flaw of being insanely horny and very needy with the ladies, which again I thought was a decent choice to, you know, cut out of the live action in the first season. It was consistent in the second. It does take a little bit away from Sanji, as it like is his big character flaw that he should be working on, but I get why they did it and I think it's fine, it works. But I must say, easily the Straw Hat who stole the show for me was none other than Nefertari Vivi. Charithra Chandran was a true delight to watch for me. Amazing, great action, and easily one of the most emotive characters with just incredibly nuanced but very strong expressions that still match the overall tone of the other crew members, right? She completely crushed it, and Chandran should never have gotten any hate. I still see some hate online right now, like even after the show is up, and I don't get it. It's really only blatant, stupid racism that caused it in the first place, and it does annoy me a lot, and stop it if that's you, really. Because she really brought Vivi to life so well. If you love One Piece, you know that's true. I was a little bit surprised by how much they seem to frame and push the, you know, Luffy x Vivi agenda here, but I'm not even gonna be mad about it. They are a pretty great duo on screen, and like the way that he puts his arm around her and they're like the only pair as they look up at the fireworks towards the end, it's feeling like romance is dawning. I do wonder if they're gonna go all the way there in the third season and just make Luffy kiss someone. We'll find out, because it will have to be Oda approved either way. And then one to bring the crew home is their newest member in Nakama, Boku wa Dokta, Tony Chopper. And going into the season, I gotta say, he was the one I was easily worried about the most, and I think that he delivered mostly. I was pretty happy with him. I told myself if Chopper was adorable and made me super emotional, he'd have done a good job, and he did check both those boxes, so props to the voice actress Michaela Hoover. You brought my monster reindeer to life really well. Now, of course, as just was expected, were there some little uncanny and cursed moments at some times? Absolutely, but never too bad that it took me out of the viewing experience. I didn't love the direction I actually went with for his voice, I gotta say, but I do know that's more personal taste than anything, I guess. Not at all a reflection of Hoover's actual performance and emotions, though Human Chopper, well, we'll get to that. Side characters. As we now shift away from the main crew, I kind of want to share just my brief thoughts on the side characters and tell you who I think really stole the show and who just kind of hit the mark. The actors will be on screen since they aren't as key, but all in all, I do think they all managed to deliver fairly fulfilling performances, ranging from decent to extremely good. Bartolomeo was really cool by the end of Loketown. He kind of started a little bit weird, and quite frankly, I didn't expect him to speak and play as big of a role in this episode as he did, but I thought it was decently cool. I liked it, was really happy to see him, and loved the rework for him seeing Luffy on that platform and really being inspired by him directly, kind of like Roger inspired all those people in the past from there. And it feels way cooler and more integrated in a way that I honestly wish was the case in the main series, where, you know, he just kind of appears and is a big fan for no reason. So in hindsight, definitely a 20 out of 20 right there. Crocus was a bit weird. Like, he was solid. He felt a little bit too old and also too young and a little bit too weak. It's kind of weird. I really did not love them using the same actor for the flashback, since that felt really wonky. But other than that, I do think that he generally followed the live action trope of making golden era characters Scottish and Irish. and I really like it. But you know who I absolutely loved instead? Laboon. Literally, I am still, having had the chance to sleep a little bit now after binging the entire show, I'm literally melting still over Laboon's teeths. The little teeths, man. They're so cute. And the little tear when they leave him broke me. So, the Jolly Roger scene was admittedly shot and colored a little bit badly. I don't know what happened there, but like Laboon's teeths were more than enough to make up for it. So cute. And so precious. The only note is really I wish you had an island inside of you, Laboon, but you made me big smile, and isn't that what truly matters with One Piece? As I already sort of mentioned earlier, the Rumber Pirates across the board were just a massive success, I think, and like, Yorkie? Okay, Yorkie, I see you, stud, and I respect it. Again, I said this in my reaction earlier. Basically, young Aragorn. Igaram, I felt like, was pretty solid, and they really let him get funky on the sax. Really good music, by the way. Dory and Broggy were pretty much the same way and did everything they needed to. I just really wished it had been more. Moving over to Drum Island, honestly, it was the cream of the crop for the season's additional characters there. Dalton was really great. He looked the part, played the part, moved me despite his stoic nature until he transforms into his hybrid form. Correa, man, dude, she was sick. Honestly, I was a little bit worried that it wasn't the GOAT Jamie Lee Curtis who wanted the role originally. I was on that agenda real hard, and when I found out that she wouldn't be filling the shoes destined for her, I was pretty bummed, man. I really went in thinking into the season, like, Katie Sagal is good, but is she my Correa? And now, yeah, she crushed that. And I was eating up her natural energy with the cast. Like, her acting elevated the rest, I think. Maybe she was almost a little bit too good for the sake of the other characters, because, like, all these years of acting really showed with her more than any of the other adults in the series, personally, is what I would have said if Hero Look did not exist. Which he did. Genuinely, it was just such an absolutely divine performance. No notes. Like, if I could only make one recommendation for you, it would be to watch the season just for him. I think he quite literally stole the show and made the Chopper flashback feel so raw and authentic in a way like I really did not think it would live up to. He talked a little slow, so maybe that's a note, but genuinely, considering how polarized I was with Walpole, I was relieved at the supporting cast in Drum Island, and that kind of ended up being my favorite episode because that flashback hit so hard and it kind of almost had a different and very unique vibe from the rest of the adventure we've seen so far. Very cool, absolutely fantastic. The villains. Now, this is where I generally really feel the season was probably at its weakest. The villains weren't bad. None of them were like terrible or like, oh, why did they do this? But admittedly, this season struggles a lot because Baroque Works isn't exactly the most interesting group of villains. Like, okay, Croc and Robin are, for sure, and Mr. 3 Galdino himself is obviously a fan favorite, but overall these ones were really hot and cold, really. Like Buggy and Elvita for opening villains were kind of letdowns. I really appreciated Judge Buggy. He was a silly, nice touch, and he just has great screen energy. I just felt like they really didn't know how to land the vibe with them this season, whereas in season 1, I think they not only hit the mark, but, went way past it and elevated Buggy to something even greater. The same can't be said about Smoker, who was an all-around badass. Outside of some weird framing where he seemed a little bit like a short king, Smoker was a top-tier addition this season specifically. His smoke effects were awesome. I was worried for nothing. He somehow made wielding 2 cigars feel actually doable and cool in real life, and now I want to smoke 2 cigars at all times, and I want that bike very badly. Like, I've always wanted one, but now that I know there is a real one out there, I want her. Now, this next point is probably no one's fault, but white hair is just definitely not as good IRL as in manga or anime, as people who enjoy cosplay probably know as well. But I guess it was as good as it could reasonably be, because this is just what it looks like. Again, not as cool as in an anime. Now, next up, I will probably say this is my personal most controversial take in this video, as my team has let me know many times. I personally was not a great fan of Toshigi, but I recognize that this is my personal taste, and from what I'm gathering from most other people I've talked to so far, Toshigi seems to be one of the best characters this season. Here's where I'm coming from though. I don't know, like, for me, the nuance of her character gets lost a little bit. I think she starts off really strong. I like her nerding out about the blades. It's almost like, you know, watching a teching video where she's just like, oh yeah, supreme grade blades and black blades and great blades and all these things. Like, feels Toshigi, but I think, I don't know, like the vibes, I can't really put my finger on what it is, but when people told me that, ooh, Toshigi is such a highlight of the show, I didn't really know where they were coming from. But again, this might just be personal taste, and you know, you probably will let me know if that is a very controversial take for you as well. As for Baroque works and the agents overall, I think that satisfactory or good enough is the best way to put them. Mr. 9 was alright, like less lovable in the live action due to the changes to his character plotline with Vivi, but I wasn't like mad at what they did with it. Mr. 5 was kind of the same way and delivered on what I expected. I think the booty shorts were pretty nice touch. They got a giggle out of me. Miss Valentine was surprisingly real fun, at least to me. She was super sassy, very charming, and really committed to the kilos, which I can appreciate. Now, of course, Leather Mommy Miss All Sunday, Nico Robin herself, was a total show stealer. Thank God they put more of her in this season than I actually expected, because every change made with her specifically was just excellent, and I cannot wait for more of her in Alabasta and after, right? I do hope they switch up the accent just a little bit for season 3. She delivers real good soft one-liners and seductive threats and has like that sexual tension with, I guess, literally everyone at all times ever, but when she delivers these more louder lines in a monologue-esque style, the aura fades a little bit, but this might also be that I'm just so freaking used to the Japanese voice actress of Robin, who has such a different style of talking, I think, that maybe that's just what I'm like struggling with a little bit here. But design-wise, every fit rocked, and the acting too. I just kind of wish we got to see her right away on that cool turtle that she has. But hey, you can't have everything. You know who I did not expect to steal the show as hard though in this season as they did? Miss Golden Week, dude. What the hell? She was a freak, a psycho. She murdered her parents. She plays with creepy, messed up dolls. Dude, I kind of loved her. What a little spaz too. Like, again, she almost felt like the biggest villain on Little Garden. I think the acting was supreme. I think the little girl being powerful and doing creepy stuff worked so much better in the live action than I ever could have expected. You know how this is like a common anime trope, but actually seeing it pulled off really well in real life just was very, very gratifying. Now, as I previously mentioned, Galdino's Mr. 3 was really good. He was unsettling and oddly moist, like always a little bit wet, which was also a little bit unsettling. I also think he had one of the best lines in the season, which was his comment about the officers not being baroque enough with their work, and I think his energy was what I kind of hope Buggy would still have this season. And then there's Wapol. And he was literally vile and scarier than normal for the most part, which was an awesome change. Also, why does he say Alabasta like that? Like a southern drawl is in it? Alabasta. He was doing a really good job, all things considered, until episode 8. And I don't know, like, if you watch the finale, episode 8 just has so many issues for me. It kind of felt a little bit of a letdown almost, because as I came out of episode 7 super hyped. I was like, damn, this season just kept getting better and better and better. And then we got the weird chopper face. We got the weird cow face. of Dalton, and Walpole was just weird. I don't know. Like, is it me? Did the acting feel like different suddenly? Yeah, just not a fan. I don't know. Maybe this is a weird take, but I did not like episode 8, that entire climax. Up until the cherry blossoms, of course. Which brings us to post-production. Alright, now we get to go a little bit technical here and really dig into the actual execution of some of the characters, scenes, and shots from a more visual effects and editing standpoint. Now sadly, I'm not Corridor Crew. I wish I was. I wish we could do that for the live action, but I do still have opinions and thoughts, and so this is gonna be my official call out to them. Yes, I'm happy to hop on the couch to look at the live action One Piece effects with you if you would like to have me. In case that they're watching this. Something I was not a real fan of to begin with was the frame edits that they were doing constantly to showcase the Straw Hats. If you've watched it and you don't remember or will watch it, I'm referring to these shots of the black manga panel frames that seem to mimic kind of like how an anime or the manga would be doing it. I guess it's like hit or miss and personal taste. I felt it was really cheesy and not exactly in a fun way for me. It feels like very dated, was just how I felt. I think they could have made these shots a little bit cleaner and pay more tribute to the manga if they wanted to stylize it that way in like a different style. Now, I was very excited to not only see them bring back the fun graphics for the posters, but even elaborate on them and integrate them more with the Baroque work cards specifically. The fact that they always appear and are like a digestic aspect of the scene that's like physically existing, that then also gets interacted with the characters, was a really fun touch, kind of playing into that slight nudge towards the fourth wall break that they sometimes had throughout the season. Like, it does get a little bit funky sometimes, but I did really appreciate the extra effort taken here to make them feel unique from any other series created so far. It's like a very unique touch. From a more technical side, I guess it's very clear that some of the more, VFX intense shots stay in darker scenes so they can use the darkness to hide some of the not so pricey effects, and it definitely is noticeable when they do certain things in the light. Like, the dinosaurs in Little Garden were fine, but not exactly like Jurassic World or like, anything super crazy that we have seen on like Game of Thrones with the dragons or something. They look a little bit just okay, I guess. Don't get it twisted though, a lot of the effects were absolutely improved. I think Luffy's in particular were really a step up from even season 1 that already felt pretty decent, and Smoker again looked really great. I'm very confident now and very excited to see the direction they take it with and see like Ace rocking some sick flames next season, and of course Crocodile. They aren't perfect and still have a ways to go, but overall, I kind of feel like the effects were really, really strong and cool across the board. As for the Cherry Blossom season that rounded out episode 8, it was a little bit dark, wasn't it? Kind of like suffering from the factor that a lot of TV shows recently have been kind of suffering from. Everything looking just a little bit too dark, but I think it still looked absolutely beautiful and kind of, brought me down from feeling a little bit weird about the entire fight before it. So I would say good enough, bit dark, but I still really liked what they did here. Walpole was very weird, specifically his devil fruit stuff, but I genuinely think that his practical effects work was done really well. The makeup and design team really crushed it with a lot of the weird, very One Piece design shapes, colors, and textures. I actually almost would have preferred that they actually really rework Walpole's fruit for the live action specifically to take even more advantage of this practical work, since when he shifted to VFX, it kind of felt a little bit weird. And then again, as I said, there was Chopper and Dalton's zone transformations, which, oh boy, were those rough for me. Like, if you are someone who was like, Manu, what are you talking about? These look great. If that's you, let me know in the comments why you feel that way, because seeing Chopper transformed and the teeth is like, ooh, I'm not even sure what it reminds me of. It almost has like the vibe of the original Wizard of Oz with the lion. It's just, no. Like, weird, I don't like it, and Dalton looks very, very weird in his hybrid form too. I do not like what happened to the zone fruits here, which is surprising because I was more worried about the Logia fruits, which turned out to look absolutely fantastic. So the fact that the zones, which are just animal human transformations, which we've seen for a long time in like cinema, right? Like just like, I don't know, like Harry Potter and stuff, or like Lord of the Rings early on, like in the early 2000s. There are really cool ways to do these, and like a lot of shows have crushed them, and these just look wrong. That's just how I feel. On the other hand though, I will say another show stealer for me was the costume design. It was absolutely peak all around, and I wanted to give a special shout out to Zorro's green coat in episode 8. I just want that thing. I want to wear that thing, like, real bad. Can I have that? Like, who do I need to ask? Can we have merch of that? And the same can also absolutely be said for the music. Whiskey Peak was insanely good, the character themes continue to be really well integrated, and I did like that every single island really had its own unique music and flavor that paid tribute to other elements of the series. Little Garden with all the sun god references, absolutely a great call. The choreography technically doesn't fall into effects, right? But I also wanted to shout out the level of improvement and commitment that each single actor put into their own performances this season, which was very noticeable. Like again, Zorro and Nami in particular just really took a total new step up, I think. Sanji, I think, was almost there, but too much extra wire work and flavor were thrown onto his stuff to feel just clean enough to be like amazing. But that said, easily one of the cleanest bits of choreography in the season was the nasty triple kick he laid into Mr. 9 in episode 2. You'll know it when you see it. It was absolutely insane. Overall and onwards. So I think it's safe to say, walking out of the season, I am really content and hopeful for Alabasta, especially because season 2s are usually the worst ones, like kind of stuck between season 1 finding itself and presenting it, and then season 3 getting really into the grind of it. And when in season 3 we're gonna see them give so much love and care to one specific island and arc, it's gonna be a really cool thing to see from this series specifically. I'm expecting plenty of Easter eggs, Ace to be a supreme hotshot and very ripped, and of course with the ending tease of Sir Crocodile, Mr. Zero himself, season 3 is bound to be a legendary display of One Piece. So I am very confident and expectant, but alas, I'm slightly also hesitant because Matt Owens has set sail from the series, and it's clear that his love has been specifically baked into every ounce of this season as well. I am optimistic though, and setting an eternal pose towards Alabasta with eager eyes and careful optimism. And if you're curious how I think that this season stacked up to season 1, you should check out my review of that in this video here, and be on the lookout for all the differences and Easter eggs that were in this season that I'll be covering in my video tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts, please. I'm very curious, and I will see you in the next video.